Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and it's been a little while since we've heard the voice of Van Harden on the radio. Of course, WHO Radio being the state's largest radio station, one of the largest in the Midwest, actually. And a lot has changed. Are you saying that's good or bad?
It's the changes?
No, that you haven't heard me for a long time.
Oh, well, it's been a relief for me. No, just kidding. Now we have you back now. I appreciate you coming on the Iowa Podcast a lot. It's good to have you back on the airwaves. You never really fully left. You've kind of been. I've heard some ads on WHO.
Yeah, you know what happened when I retired after 50 years? In fact, my last show on the air was 50 years to the day I started at Perry in broadcasting.
50 years in radio and 30 on WHO, I think.
35 on WHO. Yeah. And so when I retired, the station came to me and they said, well, best of luck to you and all of that, but we still have some clients that want you to do their commercials and speak on their behalf.
Right,
And I said, well, I'm retiring for a reason. I'm not going to come in every day. So we worked out a deal where the last Wednesday of every month I come in and they have a stack of papers there for me, and I go up in the studio and I record them, and then I go home.
Yeah, that's
why
sweet.
You hear my voice still on WHO.
That's a pretty sweet deal, and it kind of shows how that relationship you've built with the listeners is still very much intact.
Yeah, it is, and I'm always amazed when I go out and about. It's been over 4 years now, and I keep thinking people are going to forget about me or not know who I am or something. Everywhere I go, people stop me. Here's a good one. A guy stopped me the other day in the lumberyard, and he said, hey, didn't you used to be Van Harden? I said, yeah, I did.
Yeah. That's super fun. I might get into this later, but I actually owe my start in podcasting and radio to you in part. So we might get into that a little bit later. But I think everybody wants to know, what are you up outside of coming in and
doing that?
They roll out the red carpet, I'm sure, and pop the champagne every time you come back to do this. But outside of that,
it's funny.
What have you been up to?
There's like 1/10 the number of people there that there used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, like so many other businesses, they're downsizing and less people are doing more things. But what am I doing?
And I'm going to ask you about that later, how things have changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't get a chance to do a lot of while I was there was traveling. I think I took, in the whole 35 years I was there, I took 3 trips. And, we like take listeners along and we go to different places. And the station likes you to do it because they make some money on that too. So now I'm able to do that. My wife and I have been to Egypt. In fact, we went to the pyramids, and I had no idea that for an extra $10 they'd let you crawl up inside the pyramid.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we went to the top, and then we went to. In fact, that was a cool thing. We spent we did a 3-day cruise on the Nile, and then we went to. We just got back from Greece not too long ago. And we went to Athens, and then we went to a bunch of these islands where the rich people are, like George Clooney and what was the guy, Aristotle Onassis?
I have no idea. So I'll just spread the rumor that George Clooney invited you to his island.
Well, it was funny because it was a great trip, and everybody loved it. But I have also been to Zimbabwe.
Really?
My wife and I went there, and we actually started a church in Zimbabwe 5 years ago, and it's still going to this day.
Really?
And so, when we were in Greece with all these rich people, I was looking around and I think, I have been the poorest country on the face of the earth, and now I think I'm where the richest people are on the face of the earth, and I swear to God, Justin, the people in Zimbabwe were happier.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. They always say money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah.
And when you get some money, you start to realize just how true that is.
Well, and people say, well, that's because they never had anything good. They don't know. But I'm not so sure. I think it's just when you start depending on circumstances and money for your happiness, you often get disappointed.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So you touched on something interesting that everybody's been witnessing, and that is WHO and iHeart at least have changed quite like a lot since only you've been there. You left 2021, right?
Yeah.
Or like that was the final.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's changed significantly. Max and Amy, who were your replacement, were both shown the door. Max was on this show talking about that. And then two PDs, because you were program director over at WHO for a long time.
Yeah.
Two PDs have been fired since you've left.
Yeah.
And Murph and Andy left KXNO.
Yeah,
Andy
I hired them.
Yeah. And so I guess, and you just alluded that it's like kind of the staff has been heavily reduced over there. What the heck is going on?
Well, people ask me that everywhere I go because they've observed the same thing that you have. And I mean, I got to tell you, I'm not there every day, so I don't really know, and I don't pretend to come up with answers. But it has to do. I always said, people say, "How did you stay there that long? How come you never got fired?" And I've always said, "Well, there's two things that I knew. It didn't matter who my boss was, who the company was. There's two things that every one of them wants, and that's ratings and sales."
Mm-hmm.
And so that was always on the top of my mind. Whatever I did, okay, how's this going to help ratings, or how's this going to help sales? And I think they've lost both of those. Not completely, obviously, but it's just different than it used to be. And I think their strategy is a little different than when I was there. Not to say one is wrong and one is right, but I always felt like people say, "How did you have such huge numbers on your morning show?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I don't have one audience, I have two." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, I've got the audience of people that want news, weather, sports, all the basic nuts and bolts of your day when you get up in the morning, did the president get shot or anything like that?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other thing was, we had all sorts of fun.
Yeah.
And did really novel things that really had everybody talking. And I mean, it was better than TV commercials or billboards or anything, because people, "Well, did you hear what they did on the radio today?"
Yeah.
And so when you combine those two audiences, it was a winner, because it was huge. And now they're doing, like I say, I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but now they're doing more politics and news stuff, and so they still have that one half of the equation. I don't know that they have the other.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a matter of they had an audience that they'd established over a long period of time, and now, for right or wrong, I agree with you, like until you try something for a long time, you'll never know if it was the right decision. But for right or wrong, they've completely abandoned that audience entirely. It was, as I remember the Van and Bonnie show growing up, it was apolitical. And it was, like you said, it was news hits, quick news hits, apolitical, and a little corny and fun.
Yeah,
and
a lot corny.
Yeah, and that's not at all what the show is now. The morning show with Max and Amy kind of went that path, but now the whole format is completely different. And so if you were a program director today, because I heard they're calling you to, no, just kidding. But if you were programming.
Actually, they did.
Did they really?
Well, they wanted me to fill in one time. I think Max or somebody was going on vacation for 10 days and
fill in for the morning show.
Yeah, to do the morning show.
Did they ask you to fill in for program director?
No,
I heard that slot got open twice in a row.
Yeah, no, and I've told them a couple of times, I'm so flattered that you would even think of me again, but I retired for a reason, and I'm enjoying life now, and not that I wasn't then, but I'm enjoying it in a whole different way now.
Right. So if you were a program director, would you be doing these same things? Would you be keeping the apolitical format? Would you be making these changes, or would you say, no, this isn't the way we do local?
Justin, it depends a lot about your ammunition. What people do you have? Do you have people that are fun and funny? Do you have people? I always made sure everybody had to be into current events. You got to know what's going on.
Right.
But I can say this, out of my whole time in radio, my favorite radio broadcasters always had a fun sense of humor. And if you check ratings, that's the way it is. I mean, even Rush Limbaugh, I mean, he was cutting edge politically, but he was funny.
Yeah.
And he did bits, and he did so he had the two audiences.
Yeah, love him or hate him.
Yeah.
He was definitely the undisputed king of radio, whether you like his politics or not.
Absolutely.
My word, that guy drove ratings. It was crazy.
I think some people say he single-handedly saved AM radio.
Right, really? Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but he sure helped.
Yeah, wow. Are they getting away from kind of the very, very, again, this is another thing I remember with the Van and Bonnie era, is extremely local all the time. You'd cover national stories, but you'd do them through a local lens. Are they getting away from that and trying to be more regional and national? And is this the way they're going? And in that wider focus, are they actually alienating the local listeners?
No, I don't think they're going away from local. They know that that's their bread and butter. Do they do more national? Yeah, probably. I don't know, but I don't think they'll ever abandon that. And, you know, it's funny. When I first got hired all those years ago, I started doing this morning show, and we started doing a lot of funny stuff and broadcasting on top of grain elevators and all this stuff that was just so left field. The management of Palmer Communications, they weren't happy with it. I found that out later. They
Really?
didn't like,
because Palmer owned the WHO at the time. Yeah,
right. And then the ratings book came out, and they said, "Well, maybe this isn't so bad after all."
Never mind.
And so that kind of goes along with your question. They probably would have rather had me just do more national and political talk and stuff, but that's not me. And that's why I always put a person on the radio. I want to find out, who are they? I mean, I did that with Jan Michelson. I did that with Steve Dace. I did that with Jeff Angelo. I did that with Simon Conway. Its personality is such a huge part of that format, and it works.
Yeah, absolutely. I was told, one of the things I was told when I got there is that younger generations just won't listen to talk radio. And I'm not going to say who told me this. Wasn't you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I find that surprising because podcasts are growing, because I was only on Saturday Morning Live. It's a Saturday. It was kind of the Saturday version of Van and Bonnie is how I was told it was. And I remember the number one group that came up to me at the Iowa State Fair when we do live things was younger people.
Yep.
So I'm sitting here being told, don't focus your content on the younger people, focus it on the baby boomers. The young people don't care. But the Iowa State Fair, the people coming up to me were certainly baby boomers in all generations, but young people. And so did traditional radio kind of miss a window? Like, the younger people are listening to podcasts, and radio people, at least me, were being told, they don't want to listen to a talk format, but clearly they were. Did radio miss that opportunity?
Well, it had a lot to do, too, with what was going on in the broadcasting community. Because FM had come on, and, it was like, it's not cool to listen to AM. Listen to FM. And if you're listening for music, that's probably true. It's stereo, and not a lot of interruptions. But young people are just as interested in what the weather's going to do today as an older person. And I used to tell them about when I first went there, they were all worried about losing the farmers. I said, farmer wants to know what the weather is probably more than you do. And farmers don't like a good joke. Of course they do. They love it. And so it's, now there's even more than just FM. There's podcasts and there's satellite and all these other things that vie for that. But something, and people used to tell me, I remember when FM first came out, they said, are you worried about losing your job? And I said, listen, there's always going to be a box with a speaker on it, and somebody's voice is going to be coming out of that.
Yeah.
Whether it's AM, FM, satellite, whatever, I'll always have a job because I can do that. I know how to do that. But the competition is there more now than ever.
Yeah. So. And you're exactly right. Like when I was told younger people don't listen to talk radio, I think my response was, they already do.
Yeah.
Like they're listening on podcasts. It's just a matter of changing up the format.
Yeah.
And so to your point, there's always going to be a speaker on a box and I can talk through it. And I think a lot of people are choosing to do that now. Like you said, there's a lot more competition.
Does the listener like that or not? I mean, they either like it or they don't. It doesn't matter what studio it's coming from or, you know, it's just a matter of what. And that's why I said personality is such a big deal. Yeah. Because they'll either like you or they won't.
So do podcasts, because as you say, you've gone through a lot of eras, right? You've gone through the whole, you said FM's going to kill AM. It didn't. And then there was the whole, well, video is going to kill the radio star, right? It didn't.
Yeah.
The model of speaking to an audience will never change. So will podcasts disrupt radio, or will podcasts actually encourage more radio listenership? Because radio's like, at least has the potential to be live and a real-time shared experience with people now. And there's something really magical and unique about a shared experience. This was not recorded earlier. This is happening right now at this second, or at least, you know, the radio is about 7-second delay or something like that. But there's something unique about that. So do podcasts have the potential to drive radio listenership, or do podcasts have the potential to kill it?
And iHeartRadio, which was the company I worked for the longest part of my career, got that right. They got into podcasting really early, and they used it not only as an interesting format to listen to, they used it to advertise some of the same people on live radio, you know, and that only made sense. I mean, it not only made sense, but now they got 2 income outlets, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, maybe this is one of the things I want to go into a little bit later, but everyone's doing a podcast now. So that presents a lot of, I would say, opportunity for radio and for companies like iHeart. But so I want to talk about maybe what your advice would be for people, like all these companies, all these individuals starting a podcast. But first, the one thing I want to get into is, and not your politics. Don't worry, we're not going to go there. But the political climate. Again, 50 years in radio, 35 at WHO radio, it seems like, and just because it's current, but it seems like to me that political divisiveness has never been worse. Is that actually true, though? Like, have you seen this before? I had Keith Murphy in here, I want to say maybe a month or two ago, and he did mention, he goes, man, there are some things you just feel like you can't speak because you're always scared of offending someone. Do you think it's gotten worse, or have we seen this cycle before?
What do you think? I can't imagine that anybody would say it isn't worse.
I mean, I think it's worse, but
absolutely.
I don't have the career you do.
Yeah, and, you know, like Keith said, you know, if you're in a certain position, you feel like you're walking on eggshells.
Yeah, no kidding.
I never did that too much. I was, you know, with our show, I was kind of like Johnny Carson in that I didn't avoid politics. Mostly I made fun of it.
Yeah.
And I made fun of people too. But I wasn't Stephen Colbert, and I mean, we didn't go that route, and I didn't want to go that route. Whatever a person really feels good about doing and what a person enjoys doing is what they ought to do. Even if it is extreme left or right, you know, if that's what's in them, then do it. Because people can, I used to say our listeners have a BS detector. And when you weren't being genuine, they knew that.
Yeah.
They could tell that. And they want somebody that's genuine.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Gallup now has recorded it's 39% have no confidence at all in the media. Now, I'm sure everyone has a different interpretation of what the media is, but that's Gallup's highest number. I think compared with 2016, which was their other record, that was 27%. So this is noticeably higher.
Yeah.
Is this one of the reasons independent things are growing a little bit and providing competition for the nationals?
And I think especially a lot of the big national media used to kind of hide or subdue their biases. And now, I mean, you can find instances where they don't do that at all, and they're not afraid to tell you.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
you start to wonder if you're the crazy one.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's that challenging to present something. And this is what this show tries to do. And I have my biases like anybody else.
Sure.
But this is what this show tries to do. This is why we've grown so fast, I believe, is because we are doing our best to just say it as is. We have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have a libertarian coming in here soon. Of course, when we update this, he might already be on the show. But I don't, at least in my estimation, not that hard. So why do people seem to be struggling with this very basic aspect of journalism?
Well, and I had a few hosts that were so opinionated and that was fine with me, except I had one in particular that he would take a person or an instance and he would just beat it into the ground. He'd kill the guy, then he'd drag him out in the street and stomp on him. And I told him, you made your point.
Yeah.
You don't really need to do that. And the only people that really like that are the people that didn't like the guy he drug out in the street.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not going to change minds with that stuff. If you really hate the other side, or if you're really angry about what they've done to the country, it might feel really good for you to do that. But any minds you're hoping to change will never,
if that's
ever
your goal,
change.
to change minds, that doesn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, what's the process to restore trust outside of being biased and neutral? Is this damage that'll take 10 years, 20 years to undo, or longer?
They say there are people that still haven't decided who they're voting for president.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't met them.
Yeah, right? I haven't either.
I mean, it's pretty clear cut one way or the other.
So I do want to talk about like a podcast advice but I went to the Reagan film. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah, and
I thought that was exemplary.
What was striking to me, I had a moment, and I don't know if you had the same moment. I would be willing to guess maybe you did, but I had a moment when I was in the theater and they showed the WHO radio microphone in a theater for a film that's playing national across the country, and I froze in my seat, and I was like, I've been on that station.
Yeah,
I was on that station for 3 years,
and
right there I felt tied, at least in a small part, to history.
Yeah,
but you had a more direct tie to history. I think you interviewed President Reagan you had a run-in, didn't you?
I interviewed all sorts of presidents, to tell you the truth.
Right, you had a lot. Yeah.
But I was good friends with Michael Reagan, his son,
mm-hmm.
and that was how Bonnie and I got invited out to the Reagan Ranch.
Right.
To broadcast from that place that you saw in the movie, that little cubbyhole. And when they invited us to do it, I thought, oh, that's good. I thought it was like a library or something that people go through all the time. And we got there, and I couldn't believe it. It was just this little teeny ranch with a little teeny lake, and they took us through, and here's Reagan's cowboy boots and Nancy's sweaters with the N on it are in the closet, and you just felt like breaking and entering had taken place. You went through there. And then another great thing about that visit was there was a sign above the kitchen door that said Moonlight Inn. And I knew what that was. And I said to Bonnie, look at that. She said, yeah. Well, the Moonlight Inn was in between Des Moines and West Des Moines, and Reagan and his buddies used to go there when they got done at WHO and eat and have something to drink. And he used to tell some stories about it. And so the guy that was our chaperone said, do you know about anything about that sign? I said, I know a lot about it. He said, we know about everything in this house, but we could never figure out the Moonlight Inn. Yeah. So I told him the story, and I even got out some tape of Reagan talking about, well, we went out to the Moonlight Inn, and they said, that's fabulous. We're so glad you came, if nothing else, just for that.
That's funny. Now, didn't you get to meet him?
I never got to meet him.
You had a short interaction with him of some kind.
I had an interaction with the first George Bush, the second George Bush, Bill Clinton. I had quite an interaction with him, and I had an interaction kind of with Fidel Castro.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what is this? I don't know this story.
Yeah. Well, when I first became program director there at WHO, I think, I had done the morning show for a month or so, and then they made me program director. And so I'm sitting at my desk, and I get this phone call. It's from the FCC. And the last people you want to hear from
It's so true.
when you're at a radio station is the Federal
Yes,
Communications
yes.
Commission. So they said, hey, we've had a lot of reports of interference on your frequency from people, and we want to we want you to shut your station off the air for 15 minutes so we can monitor and see what it is and where it's coming from.
What?
And I knew exactly what he was talking about because we'd been getting phone calls and letters from Southeast Iowa in particular saying, what's all this stuff? We can't hear you. It's interfering with the signal and everything. And we didn't know what it was. So anyway, the guy says, you got to shut down for 15 minutes. Do it this Saturday at noon. And don't tell anybody. And I said, don't tell anybody. I got to at least go tell my boss. He said, well, yeah, you can tell your boss, but don't tell anybody else we even had this conversation. Okay. So we did. We shut off the station for 15 minutes from 12 noon to 12:15, then put it back on the air. And I thought, boy, these guys better call me back and tell me what they found. And it took about a week and a half, but they did. And they said, we found out that Fidel Castro got on 1040 with a 500,000 watt transmitter
What?
from Havana
From Havana?
and beamed it toward Des Moines. And they said it was kind of innocent. It was mostly travel information and tourism stuff, but still, that wasn't his point. His point was to mess up that signal. And the guy said, I don't know why the guy would want to mess up 1040. And I said, I do. This was Ronald Reagan's station.
Uh-huh.
And those two were not the best of friends. Let's put
Right.
it that way.
Yeah.
And so that was where my path and Fidel Castro's path crossed.
At least in the airwaves.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
trying to disrupt this just out of spite because he was mad?
Well, and I think they started, I don't know, Radio Marti or something where Reagan was, I think he was sending freedom information to Cuba. And it hacked off, so it hacked off Castro.
It's like retaliatory.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's basically. So what do they call it now? Digital warfare or cyber warfare right now. That's what they call it. Over, it's not necessarily arms and killing people, but it's a different kind of warfare. You're telling me this isn't actually that new. This stuff has been happening for decades.
No,
that's amazing. So as you indicated earlier, you have. It used to be a lot of work and a lot of money. I don't even know, because obviously I've been on your old school show, the OG Van and Bonnie show. That's where we met. Is I came on there, talk technology. Sometimes we talk Tesla, and those studios are great. They're super soundproof. They're very state of the art. They're very sophisticated. That's not cheap. Nowadays, anybody can pop up a laptop and take a cheap microphone and start a show. Yeah, exactly. For those watching on the video, we've set up this studio. And I mean, rumor is, Van, that we actually have more subscribers than all the hosts at WHO Radio.
well,
right
I
now.
wouldn't doubt that a bit.
But anybody can start a podcast right now and disrupt some of these bigger players. And a lot of people are doing this for their own businesses, for their own brands.
Yeah.
And so what would be your advice? Because you've done it for 50 years, like you said, and I completely agree, the technology may be different, but the overall fundamentals are not changed at all. So people starting a show, wanting to attract an audience, what are some of those chunks of advice for businesses or hosts that want to start their own thing?
I'm amazed at how many people start things, and I say, what's your goal? And, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's where you got to start. Why are you doing this? What are you trying to achieve? How will you describe success? When will you know you had success?
Ugh.
Have that stuff ahead of time figured out so that you're not just, you can aim at nothing forever and you'll hit it 100% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be one thing. The other thing is this going to be about something you love and are passionate about?
Oh.
And if the answer to that is no, then don't do it.
Then don't do it.
If the answer is kinda, then maybe don't do it.
Yeah.
But if the answer is yes, have fun. People will love that.
Yeah, absolutely. what's your goal, and make sure it's something that you love and are passionate about. And yeah, you're absolutely. I was talking with a CEO a couple weeks ago. That doesn't really matter, but he was their company was doing a podcast, and I was like, "Well, how's it going?" And he's like, "Well, I honestly, I'm thinking about cutting funding for it. It's not really doing anything for our brand. It's not really helping us in any way." And my immediate response when I talk to someone that says that is, "Cool. What did you want it to do?"
Yeah.
And he had a deer in the headlights moment.
Yeah.
He had no idea. He's like, "Oh, I guess I don't." I was like, if you only have 50 subscribers, depending on your business, depending on who you reach, that might be incredible to have 50 people that are downloading every show that you put out. That might be incredible for whatever your brand is. So the metric of success for him was just like, well, I just want to see, hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And I'm like, bro, that is not realistic for you.
Now, what do you have that other people don't? This used to amaze me when new people would start advertising on WHO, and I would go and talk to them. They wanted me to advertise for them. And I said, okay, if you had 30 seconds to tell me why your company's so great, what you do that others don't do, what would you tell me? And just like you said, I got deer in the headlights. It's like this was some new thing to them that they hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing, the main thing.
Yeah, and I'll also say the other most important thing is audience, just really understanding who your audience is.
Right.
I notice a lot of people don't even do that.
Right.
I'm like, well, who would actually subscribe to this? Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I was like, well, maybe you shouldn't start a show yet.
I do a lot of speaking, and before I ever say yes, I say, who's my audience going to be?
Because you need to know how to address them.
Yeah.
Van Harden, former WHO radio morning host, and I should also point out you have a new book coming out. What's the title of that, and how do we pick that up? Like, what's your website? I know you have a great website because your son happens to be has an amazing web company.
Yeah, he does. I've done 3 books. This will be my 3rd one. And, as you retire, you start to think more about things that are most important to you and things that maybe you think other people don't think too much about. And I've been an adult Bible teacher for 40 years now, and that's brought me a lot of great joy. And one thing that I've noticed, I keep saying, well, now, I'm a Christian. If this whole Jesus thing is so great, how come everybody isn't lining up to get in on this? Why? How come it's such a small percentage? And I thought, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. But after studying a lot, I thought, I'm not sure people really realize who Jesus actually was.
that's so true.
We've done a real good job of teaching from Bethlehem to the crucifixion and resurrection. 33 years, most churches have done a pretty good job of teaching that. But do they know who Jesus was before Bethlehem? And so the name of my book is Jesus, the Prequel.
Nice.
And
okay.
I didn't make anything up. It's all scriptural. And I don't think people really realize that Jesus, when you search, created them and created everything. And if that's the case, what percentage of your life do you owe to him? Well, 100%.
All of it.
That's even before you get to the salvation part of it on the cross.
Absolutely.
So that's what my book is about.
And it's good timing for that here as I wrap up, because people don't go to church anymore. The numbers are dropping significantly, and a lot of people don't know this. I have a Bible major. That was one of my majors in college. I double majored actually, design and and Bible, so graphic design and Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and we'll just leave it at this, but one of the things that I've noticed a lot is when people say they think they know what Christianity, whether you disagree with Christianity, you're a Christian yourself, you don't like Christians, that's fine. Those are actually my favorite conversations. But I've noticed that a lot of people don't actually know what Christianity is.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't actually know what Jesus stood for. And a lot of people don't actually know what the Bible says, because people will tell me all the time, well, the Bible says this awful thing. And I'm like, oh, I have a Bible major. I didn't know it said that thing. Where is that?
Yeah.
And I'll say, go Google it. Tell me where it is. They can't find it. And so usually when I'm going to have a discussion on the Bible or scripture with people, we have to start with, what verse are you talking about? What specific section? What's the historical significance?
Well, I love the New Testament, but I will say this. When I did this study about Jesus before Bethlehem, it shined a whole different light
I bet.
on the New Testament to me.
Wow.
Oh, that's the same guy that was in the beginning. And wow, that really, and you know, the book is for everyone. It's for presidents. It's for guys under bridges. It's for men. It's for women. It's for kids. It affects, the stuff in there affects absolutely everyone.
And the name again?
It's Jesus the Prequel.
Jesus the Prequel. And is it out now? When's that come out?
It should come out within the month.
Come out within the month. And what's your website, Van, so people can find you?
VanHarden.com.
VanHarden.com.
Isn't that creative?
Wow, that's really unique.
And that's HARDEN.
That's right. VanHarden.com.
Yeah. And you'll be able to get it on the website when it comes out. Probably cheaper than, it'll be on Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all of that. They'd probably get it cheaper on my website.
Good to know. Van Harden, former host of the WHO radio show known as The Van and Bonnie Show, of course. And again, I appreciate you a lot because you gave me one of my starts in radio. I was tinkering around with podcasting, had no idea anything about radio. And what I remember about you is how you treated me from day one when I was a guest in the studio, but also when I had my show, as if I had been there for 40 years. You're one of the team, and that's the one thing that I remember about you specifically. Bonnie was great too. She's just not here right now, but that's the one thing I remember about you is you treated me like an equal day one, so I really appreciate that. VanHarden.com. Van, thank you so much for coming on the Iowa
Thank you for
podcast.
asking me. I'm flattered that you would even care.
I absolutely do, and I know the listeners do as well.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.